Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sun and Fun 2008. We had a beautiful morning this morning with more than 20 balloons going across the sky on a beautiful, still morning. Tom Marcotte, our speaker this morning, is with the Light Sport branch for aircraft certification. Tom's been an airworthiness inspector for more than 21 years, and he's certified in both rotor wing and fixed wing. He's only been with this new job for 6 months, and he's excited because he's learning new things, something that keeps him young, keeps us all young. Tom is excited about the way the new aircraft are configured, the high wing, the low wing, the open cockpit. And this job is a learning situation for him and an exciting one. As his job continues, he will be looking at the light training centers, light sport training centers, to be sure that the training that light sport people are getting is appropriate and adequate to the work you're doing. It's an exciting field. It's one that is evolving, and we need all of us together to make this work. Tom has a lot of information for you this morning, so if during his presentation a burning question comes, we really want you to raise your hand, and we'll come to you with the microphone, ask your question, so Tom has an opportunity to really give you an answer on the spot. Please welcome our speaker this morning, Tom Marcotte.
Thank you, appreciate it. Good morning and welcome to everyone here. This is a new experience for me to make a presentation like this, and as Christine says, we want to talk this morning about the light sport aircraft certification, and also we want to talk about the repairman certification for light sport aircraft. My background, as she stated, I've got 21 years with the FAA, but only 6 months in this branch. And I've worked on both rotary wing and fixed wing aircraft in the Army Reserve for 16 years. So I have been around smaller aircraft, but nothing this small in the past. You know, the FAA has a regulation for everything, and the regulation that covers the light sport aircraft certification is 21-190 and 21-191. Also, there's instructions on how to do all of these things, and that's in the FAA Order 8130.2F. Excuse me. But first thing we want to do is find out what a light sport aircraft is, and there's some things in here that they're kind of hidden when you first read these definitions, and this is in part 1 of the Federal Aviation Regulations, and I'm going to read this to you. It says light sport aircraft means an aircraft other than a helicopter or a powered lift that since its original certification has continued to meet the following. Now, before we give you this criteria, I want to emphasize here that where it says that since its original certification. And you may think that, well, you know, a light sport aircraft is brand new. There weren't any certificated aircraft before light sport come about that would work as a light sport aircraft. But we will look at that again later also, because there are some aircraft that can be flown by sport pilots that are already certificated today. But the definition of a light sport aircraft has a maximum takeoff weight of 1,320 pounds or 1,430 pounds for operation over water. It has a maximum airspeed and level flight with continuous power of 120 knots. It doesn't give you a VNE speed for the light sport aircraft, but there is a VNE speed for gliders, which is 120 knots. The aircraft has to have a stall speed of maximum of 45 knots without lift enhancing devices. The aircraft can only have a capacity of 2 persons, including the pilot. It has to have a single reciprocating engine if powered. Now, in the preamble to the regulation, there's some comments in there about reciprocating engines, and it includes the Wankel engine and diesel engines. So therefore, Wankel engines are included and diesel engines are included if you can ever find one light enough to put in an aircraft. Another thing that has come about in the last few months of these type of aircraft are electric aircraft. We looked at one a few days ago that this thing had an 18 horsepower electric motor with a bunch of batteries below the seat. You know, this does not fit into the light sport category because of the regulation says it has to have a reciprocating engine. It may not fit into the ultralight category because it's over the 254 pounds. because of the multitude of batteries that it has on it. So the electric aircraft, this is a trike that had this electric power, may have to go into the experimental amateur built category. The propeller on these aircraft has to be fixed pitch or ground adjustable if a powered aircraft other than a glider, and it has to be fixed pitched or auto feathering if it's on a glider. That means anytime the engine is shut down, whether intentionally or if they have an engine failure, the prop has to feather on this thing. The gyroplane has to have a fixed pitch, semi-rigid, teetering two-blade rotor system. If you have a cabin on this aircraft, it cannot be pressurized. The aircraft has to have a fixed landing gear except for an aircraft intended for operation on water or a glider. These exceptions are if it has a hull on it. If it's a water operation, it can have a hull or it can have retractable landing gear. The picture that you see up there is one that has a hull on it. There's been some discussion about if you have a trolling motor on this hull to get you around while you're on the lake going out to where you want to take off, whether that's a twin-engine vehicle or not. And I don't know what the outcome of that is. There's been some discussion about it, and you're actually not powering the aircraft with the trolling motor, you're just moving the aircraft around the water. It can have a retractable landing gear if it's a glider, or can be fixed. Another thing that we want to look at here is going back to these aircraft that were certificated before light sport that qualify for light sport, is there's no mention here of the type of airworthiness certificate in this definition of a light sport. Excuse me. When you look at the different types of light sport aircraft, we have the single engine land. The one up on the left is a primary aircraft. It's a J3 Cub. The one on the right there is the ultralight-like two-place that was used as a trainer before light sport came about. Of course, then on the lower left is the SLSA, or the consensus standard aircraft. You can have lighter than air aircraft, glider, both powered and non-powered, and the gyroplane. The gyroplane cannot be an SLSA because there are no accepted consensus standards for gyroplane aircraft at this time. So that can only be the experimental aircraft. The two newest categories in light sport are the weight shift control and the powered parachute. Matter of fact, I just took my first ride in a weight shift control just a day or two ago, and it's really exciting to me. I flew in powered parachutes back in the early 90s, but these two type of aircraft are the newest types in the light sport category, and they're a lot of fun. What is not a light sport aircraft? When you look at the things that cannot be light sport aircraft that somebody might want to make a light sport aircraft, if it qualifies for a 103 ultralight, it cannot be a light sport aircraft. Something has to be changed on it to make it light sport. Whether powered or unpowered, the hang gliders, paragliders, and training exemption holders cannot be light sport. Also, multi-engine aircraft, powered lift helicopters, or complex aircraft with retractable gear, except those working over water or a glider. Also, if you have a propeller that's controllable pitch inside the cockpit, you can't make that a light sport aircraft. The training exemption that was in effect for a number of years for the ultralight-like aircraft, or what they call the fat ultralight, no longer exists. That went out January the 31st, 2008. So people who did not get their aircraft converted or registered by January 31, 2008, no longer have the opportunity to make these a light sport aircraft. There are three possibilities for an aircraft to be a light sport aircraft, and this is where we're going to talk about the certification of the aircraft. There's the SLSA, which is a special light sport aircraft. This is a new aircraft manufactured to the industry-developed consensus standards, and these standards are accepted by the FAA. They're not approved. It's kind of like the automotive industry, where they have standards that they build their automobiles to, and they are self-regulated in keeping these things up to the standards. These aircraft are ground tested and flight tested and delivered to the customer in a ready to fly condition, and they may be used for compensation or hire in training and towing or for rent. There's 5 classes of the light sport, the SLSA. That's the airplane, the glider, the weight shift control, powered parachute, and lighter than air. I thought there was a question here, but there's not. The second of the 3 possible categories are the ones that we call the I aircraft. In the regulation 21-191, there's an I-1 and an I-2 and an I-3 aircraft. The I-1 aircraft are the aircraft not previously certificated that do not meet the definition of 103. Again, these are normally the ones that were flying under the exemption for training under the light sport category, the 2-place aircraft. And also, again, they had to be registered by January 31, 2008, and at that time, this exemption no longer exists. The second possibility for certification of light sport aircraft is the new aircraft assembled from a kit that meet a consensus standard. Now, a new consensus standard kit has to be a part for part, bolt for bolt duplicate of a special light sport aircraft. A company has to get certification of a light sport aircraft under 21-190, then they can make all the parts and all the bolts and everything and sell it as a kit. One of the things it does not have to do, it does not have to meet the amateur built standard where you over 51%. The customer and the manufacturer determine to what extent this kit is involved or how much has to be done to put this kit together. The third possibility for the experimental is the aircraft that were previously certificated in the special light sport category, and they are converted to experimental light sport category, and there are a number of reasons for that to happen. One of them is if the person no longer wants to maintain the aircraft as a special light sport, he can have it certificated as an experimental light sport. The second possibility is where the manufacturer of the original special light sport aircraft has gone out of business, has not designated someone to take over the production of parts or to keep these things in the air, and no one has voluntarily come forward to help keep this aircraft in the special light sport category, and they are automatically converted to the experimental light sport aircraft. In the experimental light sport aircraft area, there's the same categories of aircraft that is in the special, except for the experimental can have the gyroplane in it because the consensus standard is not accepted there. The third possibility is the previously certificated aircraft, and this is what we referred to in the very beginning when it talked about the previously certificated aircraft. The standard category aircraft, there are some that meet the light sport definition. The J3 Cub, the Champ, and there's a list of them on our website out there of the ones that meet this. Also the primary category aircraft, such as the Quicksilver and the Rams, meet it. Experimental category, amateur built, and exhibition also, some of them also fall into the light sport definition. These aircraft that meet the definition of light sport aircraft but are in the primary or the standard or the experimental category can be operated by a light sport pilot because they meet the definition. However, they cannot be recertificated as light sport aircraft. If you remember a few slides back, we talked about aircraft that were non-certificated could become light sport under the I-1 exemption or I-1 regulation. Another thing that when we think about this, the fact that these aircraft that are in the primary or standard or experimental category is just an added benefit to the definition of the rule. The rule was originally designed just to cover the exemption aircraft or the aircraft that were the 2-place trainers. And the fact that these others fall into that category now, as far as the weight category and the power and everything, is just a secondary benefit. The airworthiness certificate for the special light sport aircraft is a little bit different than the certificate for the experimental. If we look at the category of the special light sport aircraft, it says the category is light sport aircraft, and the purpose is whether it is weight shift. In this case, it can be powered parachute, airplane, glider, or whatever. Of course, the airworthiness certificate has the normal information on it, the N number, the serial number, the builder, the model, the date of issuance, and the expiration date. If you'll notice, this one, the special light sport aircraft has an unlimited expiration date. When you have a special airworthiness certificate, you also have to have operating limitations on what the aircraft can and cannot do. Anytime you have a special airworthiness certificate or a pink airworthiness certificate, it has to have operating limitations. We're going to go into one of these operating limitations in a few minutes because it's the one that's going to expire in January 31, 2010. And we're going to get into that on this airworthiness certificate. If you look at this certificate, it has the same information except for the category is called experimental. The purpose is operating light sport, and in the WSC is weight shift control, or it could have PPC for powered parachute or airplane or glider. Also, it has the same information as the N number, the builder, the serial number, the model. On this case, the expiration date is January 31, 2010. So you know from looking at this airworthiness certificate that it has an operating limitation of training on it. Again, operation limitations are required anytime there's a pink airworthiness certificate. And this is the limitation 13. This is kind of small, so I'm going to read you exactly what this says. If the aircraft has experimental light sport operation limitation number 13, which says no person may operate this aircraft for compensation or hire, except this aircraft may be used for compensation or hire to conduct flight training in accordance with 91.319E until January 31, 2010, at which time this airworthiness certificate and operating limitation expires. So if your airworthiness certificate expires, you no longer can fly this aircraft. But the operation limitation number 13 must be removed prior to January 31, 2010 by requesting amended operating limitations through your local flight standard and district office. If this is not accomplished, the airworthiness certificate expires and the aircraft cannot be recertificated as a light sport aircraft. This is a fact that needs to be disseminated to all the people in the light sport arena that make sure that everybody who has training on their operating limitations, that they know that they have to get this done before January 31, 2010. When we look at this picture right here, we appear to have three identical aircraft, and the aircraft in looks may be exactly the same, but we have, again, the I category aircraft. The I-1 is the existing fleet, the aircraft which could have been an exemption trainer. It can be used for flight training until January 31, 2010. The next category is the KIT, the consensus standard aircraft, built from an SLSA model. It cannot be used for flight training, for compensation or hire. Then you have the aircraft that was changed from special to experimental. Again, it cannot be used for training for compensation or hire. Yes, have a question here in the front.
Yeah, who would be the manufacturer for the experimental?
Do we have someone with a microphone?
Yeah, who would be the manufacturer for the experimental? Would the kit manufacturer be like for the experimental amateur build?
You're talking about the top one there?
No, the experimental.
Well, all of these are experimental aircraft.
Okay, but if I bought the kit from the manufacturer, would I be the manufacturer of it, or would the kit manufacturer on the airworthiness?
On the consensus standard, I believe that would be the manufacturer of the kit. I've got another question, but I'm going to have to think about that one, about how it's registered. It may be that it's registered as your kit, not the manufacturer. You would be the...
On the amateur build.
Right. Had another question back there.
Backtracking just a little bit to the airworthiness certificate. If you have one of the certified aircraft, like a air coupe,
Right?
and it has its own airworthiness certificate, does that stand in effect with
Okay,
this
the original
requirement?
airworthiness certificate
Right.
will stay into effect. You won't have any changes as far as your maintenance requirements because it is a standard category aircraft.
Right.
But it qualifies for a light sport to fly that aircraft because it meets the definition of the maximum weight, the maximum speed, everything. So nothing changes on the certification, but it is eligible for light sport pilot.
Okay, thank you.
I may have an answer to your question in these slides, and if not, then after this is over, then let's get together and discuss that. I've got 3 guys in the back there that work in the same office, and they can help me get answers to these. Now, the flight training for compensation or hire is available on the I-1 aircraft. Those are the exemption aircraft, and also towing for compensation or hire. Now, if you get your operating limitations amended by January 31, 2010, you can no longer do flight training, but your towing does not expire. You can still do towing after that time frame. Each experimental aircraft has to have a program letter stating the purpose of the aircraft, such as operating light sport and flight training. Aircraft in the I-1 category, when they're going for certification, they will have an operating limitation on there, or the flight test. And you have to designate a flight test area. Usually it's for 5 hours, even though some aircraft may have existing time on it. It's not absolutely necessary to have the flight test area on the I-1 aircraft, but if you don't do the flight test area and you want to make a modification on that aircraft, then you have to go to your flight standards district office and get it, your operating limitations amended to put the flight test area on it. So the best thing to do is to get your flight test area on your original operating limitations. Then if you change a prop or something like that on the aircraft that's a major modification, your test flight area is already designated. You make your modification, you go out and do your 5 hours of test flight, you sign it off, and you're ready to go again. So it's a lot more convenient to whoever does your original certification to have that operating limitation on there rather than 6 months later or a year later have to go back to the FSDO and get this added to your operating limitations. The identification on the light sport aircraft, the SLSA airplane has to have 12-inch letters or as large as practical. The other N numbers on the experimental light sport aircraft and on the SLSAs that are not airplanes have 3-inch letters. Also, there's placarding that's required on the light sport aircraft. On the SLSA, by the door or close to it, around the door somewhere, it has to say light sport. If it's an experimental aircraft, it has to have the word experimental on it. And this is referenced in AC 45-2. There's also some requirements for when you say the 3-inch letters or the 12-inch letters, there's some dimensions in the 45-2 which gives you that the letter has to be 2/3 as wide as it is tall and some information like that. So before you put your N number on there, you need to look at the dimensions of the aircraft, or the N number, and the spacing of the numbers. I've seen some of them where they're jammed right close together and they're not readable from a specified distance. So we want to look at all that before you put your your identification on the aircraft. These two aircraft, if they look to be the same type of aircraft, the top one is an experimental aircraft, and you see that on the bottom of the tail, it's not real visible, but it has the 3-inch N numbers on it. The bottom one is a special light sport aircraft, and it has the large N numbers on the airplane. And that has to be 12 inches or as large as practicable. If you couldn't put more than a 10-inch letter on there, then that would be acceptable. But in most cases, you can get the 12-inch letters on the aft part of the fuselage. Aircraft also have to have an identification plate. This plate must be fireproof. It must be attached to a structural member behind the passenger door. That's one of the things that we've run across on a lot of aircraft. They put these on the framework up by the cockpit or something like this, but the order says that they will be behind the passenger door. They have to be etched, stamped, engraved, or marked by another approved fireproof marking, something that is not going to come off of there if the aircraft crashes. You can still identify the aircraft with the data plate. One of the things that we've seen on some of the aircraft is it has to be attached to a structure member, but there may not be a good place to attach it. So they'll use ADEL clamps and attach these to the frame with ADEL clamps. If you have two ADEL clamps to holding the data plate, that's sufficient also. So as long as they won't come off in a crash or in a fire. The information that's required on the data plate is the manufacturer or kit builder, not the designer or plans producer. That's the answer to your question that I was thinking was there. The manufacturer is who built the kit, not the manufacturer of the kit or the designer of the kit. It has the model designation and the serial number. And again, all of these have to be either embossed in or stamped in or something in the data plate so that it is not made unrecognizable in a crash or a fire. There are requirements for emergency locator transmitter on some light sport aircraft, but only on the airplane, and only if this aircraft is designed to operate with more than one person. It's not required until after the test flight, but after the test flight, a two-place airplane requires an emergency locator transmitter. Imported aircraft. Imported aircraft have the same requirements as the American aircraft. As far as the consensus standard, the manufacturer will issue a statement of compliance for your aircraft or kit by the serial number. So they have to have a statement of compliance from the manufacturer before it can be registered and certificated in this country. There are additional requirements on imported aircraft that these are that the aircraft or aircraft assembled from a kit must be eligible for an airworthiness certificate in the country of manufacturer, meaning that if the country does not allow this aircraft to be registered and certificated in their own country, we're not going to accept it in our country. Also, the country must have an agreement with the FAA that covers the import and export of aircraft. Next, we're going to get into the certification of repairmen. What we have here is a picture of an air creation just coming out of the kit being assembled here. The regulations covering the certification of repairmen is 14 CFR 65-107, and the order covering this is 8000.84. All of these references that I'm giving to regulations and to orders are out on the internet. You can find them from our website. The repairman ratings, there's a repairman inspection rating. To be eligible for an inspection rating, an individual must attend and successfully complete a 16-hour FAA accepted course. There's a maintenance rating. The person must attend and successfully complete an 80 to 120-hour course, depending on the class of light sport aircraft. There's different requirements for a weight shift or for an airplane. The inspection rating, in the airworthiness world, most of the time you think of like an A&P mechanic and then an IA, which an IA can sign off things that the A&P can do. In light sport, the inspection rating is limited to one experimental aircraft that you own. and we'll cover that in just a minute. The course consists of 6 elements. There's a number of organizations that are giving these courses around the nation, and you can find these on our website also. The first element of this inspection rating covers the regulations and guidance material applicable to light sport aircraft, review of operating limitations, condition inspections, the way to record entry and review of ADs, and manufacturer safety directives. One of the things that, since this is not a T-seat aircraft, the question comes up, why do you have to worry about airworthiness directives? Because airworthiness directives are designed for a T-seat aircraft or P-seat aircraft. But if you have a light sport aircraft with a TC-PC engine on it, even though it is a light sport aircraft, you don't have to comply with airworthiness directives, how are you going to sign this aircraft off as being safe on a T-seat engine if you haven't completed the ADs applicable to that engine? So normally you wouldn't consider ADs on these aircraft, but if you have a TC-PC engine, then you have to look at those before you can sign it off as airworthy. Manufacturer safety directives come out from like Rotax or whoever the engine manufacturer is, Hearth or some of these that you have to comply with also. And it also has to comply with all the consensus standards. You can't do any modifications that do not have these. The second element is the inspection procedures. Advisory Circular 43131B gives acceptable methods, techniques, and practices in aircraft inspection and repair, and the use of manufacturers' manuals, technical data, and personal safety in the work environment. So there's the first 2 elements of the inspection rating. The third one, aircraft theory of flight and discussion of aircraft systems. Theory of flight, most everybody's gone through that when they started getting an aircraft. If they don't learn theory of flight, they don't fly for very long. These include the proper operation of critical areas that are prone to failure and fatigue. These systems includes the airframe, including the instrumentation, the landing gear, the brakes, including the fuel and oil systems, the propeller with the gear reduction unit, accessories including the ballistic parachute, and flight control operation and rigging. So this is the third element of the inspection rating. It's probably one of the larger elements that gets you doing the actual condition inspection for the aircraft. Oops, let's back up one. Element number 4 is use of an inspection checklist. It's always good to have a checklist to go through the process of doing your inspection. And usually the manufacturer will provide you with a checklist to do this. If not, you have FAA AC 90-89A, which is the amateur-built aircraft and ultralight flight testing handbook. In Appendix A, it has a checklist in there. The 5th element is the student course evaluation. You may think this is an odd element for a training course, but it is critical. If you don't complete this, you don't complete the course. Every student has to do the critique of the course, not only in the content of the course, but the facility that it's given at, the equipment that they have to look at. And the reason they do this is these evaluations are sent into AFS 610 back in Oklahoma City, and we look at the evaluations to determine if the training facility is doing the job that they're supposed to be doing, and if they're doing it in an efficient and manner that gets these people the training that they need. The final element of the inspection course is the final test. It has 50 questions, multiple choice, 4 questions in each subject area. The minimum passing grade is 80%. So it's a pretty rough test. It's, once you get through with this and you pass it, then you will be well qualified to do the annual condition inspection on your aircraft. If you don't complete the course, you can't go back and just take a certain portion of the course. You have to take the whole course all over again. Light sport repairman with an inspection rating will allow the repairman to perform the annual condition inspection on the experimental aircraft owned by him or her. So this is aircraft specific. It gives the class, the registration number, and the serial number that you can do the inspection on. If you sell this aircraft, you can no longer do the inspection on this aircraft. Whoever buys the aircraft can go to the course and get qualified to do the inspection on this aircraft, or you can have an A&P do it. The maintenance rating, the courses go from 80 to 120 hours depending on what course you have. They have all of the 5 different ratings for airplane, weight shift, powered parachute, glider, and lighter than air. So there's 5 elective courses that you can take, and you don't have to take all of them. You can take the core courses plus one of the electives gets you for a repairman for a specific class of aircraft. It's designed in modules of instructions and customized for the specific type of aircraft. The 3 core modules include the airframe, regulation, airframe, and engine. We'll get that to a minute. Like I said a while ago, there's 5 classes eligible for maintenance rating. That's the airplane, weight shift, powered parachute, lighter than air, and glider. There is no maintenance rating for a gyroplane. Gyroplane is strictly an experimental aircraft, and the maintenance rating course is designed for the special light sport aircraft. There's a limit on the number of students in a course to get the level 3 standard training. Have a maximum of 16 students per instructor on the lecture part of the class and 8 students per the practical projects. And of course, if this course is given in a 147 school, that number can be raised. Excuse me. As I said, the maintenance rating has got got modules to it. There's a regulation and maintenance overview, which is a 16-hour core module. Everyone who goes for a maintenance rating has to go through this module. Module number 2 is the airframe. It's 24 hours. And it says it must cover at least 2 representative aircraft for the practical session. So the provider of the course has to have 2 airframes there to work on to get your maintenance rating in this class of aircraft. Module 3, engine and propeller, which is 45 hours. It's also a core module. This covers must have at least 3 representative engines. It has 1 water-cooled 2-cycle, 1 air-cooled 2-cycle, and 1 4-cycle engine. Now this module, even though it is a core module under most circumstances, it's not required for non-powered gliders. Module 4 is the airplane class. It's 35 hours. Again, must cover at least 2 representative airframes not produced by the same manufacturer. The same thing for Module 5, the weight shift, but it's a 19-hour course, elective, if you're going for weight shift control aircraft. Module 6, powered parachute, 19 hours, elective. Again, has to have 2 representative aircraft not produced by the same manufacturer. Lighter than air, this is a 64-hour elective module. Must have at least one representative aircraft. Module 8 is the glider class. It's 40 hours, and it's also elective. Must have at least 1 representative aircraft. Now here, if the applicant wishes to be rated on gliders with a retractable or fixed engine, Module 3 must also be completed. So if you're going for a non-powered glider, you do 1, 2, and 8. If you're going for a powered glider, you have to do 1, 2, 3, and 8. That's where you get the really long training courses. The holder of a repairman certificate with a maintenance rating, approve and return to service a special light sport aircraft or any part thereof after performing and inspecting maintenance to include the annual condition inspection and 100-hour inspections. Also line maintenance, preventative maintenance, or alterations excluding major repair or major alteration on a product produced under the FAA approval of an SLSA aircraft. Also, the maintenance rating individual may perform an annual condition inspection on an experimental light sport aircraft that has been issued an experimental certificate under 21191I. That's whether it's on I-1, I-2, or I-3. There is only one repairman certificate. All of your ratings will be put on that one certificate. The front it will have your information about yourself, and your certificate number and all that. On the back of the rating, the top of it here, it says inspection rating. And if you look at, if he has an inspection, down in the limitations, it'll give you what that inspection rating is for. And in this particular instance, it's for a weight shift control in number 337EF, serial number 18-337. So he can only do inspections on that one aircraft, and he can only do inspections on that one aircraft as long as he owns it. Once he sells that aircraft, then he can no longer do the inspection on that aircraft. The new person either has to get their own inspection certificate or have an A&P do the inspection. The second rating here is a maintenance rating. He has a maintenance rating in powered parachutes. He can do any powered parachute. It's not limited to something that he owns. So the maintenance rating is a much broader rating. This is my contact information to get in touch with myself or anyone in our branch. I'm not going to read all this to you. There's the main number that we call there is at the top is 405-954-6500. We're going to leave this up here for a few minutes because we're just about finished. There's an email address there that you can email questions, or the mailing address there. My presentation is over. I want to talk about we have three operations inspectors in the back of the class here. Rich Michaels, Jim Lamb, and Robbie Whitesell. They can help me with any questions in the operational side of the house if you have any questions. So at this time, I want to say if you have any more questions, let's get them asked, and we'll see if we can get you some answers from it. Okay, right here in the front.
What's an A&P need to do the maintenance and the inspection?
An A&P?
Yeah.
A&P can do the maintenance and inspection on the aircraft. Now, there are some limitations to what an A&P can do. Rotax has come out and said that anyone who's going to sign off a Rotax engine has to go to the Rotax school. So you can't do a sign-off on a Rotax engine return to service unless you've been to that school. Also, in the SLSA aircraft, they have the manufacturer designates in his manual what can be done and who can do it. If he says that an SLSA repairman can do this work, like changing a tire, and he didn't include an A&P or something like that, then an A&P can't do that work. That's correct. And when we talked about they got back with the manufacturers and said, well, why did you limit this just to the repairman? They said, well, we meant repairman or higher. Well, there is no higher in the airworthiness side of the house. The certificate for an airworthiness is not like an operational certificate. When you have an operational certificate, you could have rec pilot, private pilot, commercial pilot, and ATP. And an ATP can do anything a private can. It can do anything a rec pilot can. But in the airworthiness side of the house, you have to have an A&P. You have a separate repairman certificate. You have a separate IA. So it's not on the same certificate. So if the manufacturer in his manual does not state that an A&P can do this, he can't do it. And some of the manufacturers are looking at this and probably going to be changing their manuals.
Yeah, that probably needs to come out in an AC or some other order, so A&Ps really know what they can do, what they can't do, and because I know there's a lot of confusion out there. I'm an A&P, and the guys I talk to, a lot of them don't even want to do it because they don't want to,
Well, see, it's really up to the manufacturer who they want to do this work. To give you an example, we have a weight shift back in Oklahoma City that our operations inspectors fly, and in the maintenance manual for that aircraft, it says that a repairman can change the tire. Now, if they have a flat on that aircraft, these guys can't change it as the pilot. I can't go out there as an A&P and change it. We have to get a repairman or a representative from the manufacturer to come into Oklahoma City and change that tire. And it was just a misunderstanding of the of the way that the certificates work on the part of the manufacturer, because if they thought it would meant repairman or higher, then an A&P could do it. But well, like I said, there's no hierarchy of ratings in the airworthiness side of the house.
So they have to state A&P or maintenance,
Yeah.
who's ever maintenance qualified for it.
Okay. Got a question back. Well, Rich is up here.
The one thing that we've talked about is whenever an AMP is doing work on a light sport aircraft, that they call the manufacturer if they can't find that information, because all they would need is just usually in most cases, the manufacturer's willing to have the AMP do the work. They would just end up getting a faxed letter of authorization saying, yes, the AMP can work on it, and then that would go ahead. That's the way we tell the AMPs right now, is to contact the manufacturer on whatever aircraft they're going to be working on to get approval.
And there would have to be no previous training or anything like that?
If the manufacturer says that there was no previous training, then that would be
that
correct.
would
It's all up to the manufacturer of that aircraft.
And that would apply for a condition inspection also?
If the manufacturer says the condition inspection, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
How about in general with a condition inspection?
What do you mean in general?
For an AMP to do a condition
Yes, the
inspection?
manufacturer says so.
As long as it's either in the book or you get
Yes.
okay.
Yep.
When we get that, Michael, we couldn't hear the last part of those questions. Would you repeat that last question that you asked, Rick?
Yeah, for the condition inspection, what the MP needed to do for a condition inspection. And the same thing, get okay from the manufacturer.
Right. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, Robbie, let's get your microphone back there.
Just a comment, Tom. I just wanted to make sure that they understand the phone number for our branch. It's the 6400. I think you said 6500, and I wanted to make sure that they knew that
Okay,
it was
yeah, okay.
6400.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tom, I want to tell you thank you very much for sharing this information. It went beautifully, and the people that were fortunate enough to be here have learned a great deal. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. We're going to switch over to Cheryl in Studio B and proceed on with a very special day at Sun and Fun. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Anybody who's interested in answering or talking to Tom personally, come on up. We'd like to stay here and see you and greet you. So come on, we'll talk to you.
Okay.